Hi, I'm Father Jim Forson, and I'd like to share with you a few reflections on the gospel of this 19th Sunday in Ordinary Time. It's a gospel that we've all heard many times before of the disciples out on the lake in the boat in the midst of a big storm, and Jesus walks to them on water, and they think they're seeing a ghost. You know, it's one of the questions I've asked my congregation a couple of times. Do you guys believe in ghosts? And I was shocked at how many people raised their hand. More than half the congregation said, yeah, yep, we believe in ghosts. And I suspect if I asked you folks for a show of hands, probably many of you, if not most of you, would believe in ghosts too. I don't. Not because I'm superior or anything and I had people say to me, no, Father, believe me, we've had a ghost in our house, and it's a friendly ghost, but it's a ghost. And other people have said to me, I have a friend who sees ghosts, sees dead people. And, I don't want to sound superior or above it. And these people are not wackadoos or anything, but I just don't buy it. I believe in the resurrection, so I don't believe in ghosts. But I understand that many, if not most people do. And they certainly did in the time of Jesus. All of those Mediterranean people, all of the disciples, everybody believed that there were ghosts, evil spirits that could control the wind or the sun, or it could cause famine or floods. And they could never combat evil spirits. The only way to combat an evil spirit would be to have a more powerful spirit that you were aligned with that could drive it away. And in this case, that would be God working through his agent, Jesus Christ, that would overcome the evil. So what we are encountering in this story is the disciples are coming face to face with evil. It begins with such a wonderful, subtle truth. This story has many subtle truths. The first one is, it says Jesus made them get into the boat while he dismissed the crowds. And the more literal translation is, he compelled them to get into the boat to cross that sea. Now, even though there were some experienced fishermen among the apostles, nevertheless, crossing that Sea of Galilee was risky business, because at the Sea of Galilee, a storm could come out of nowhere on a moment's notice. And there were heavy winds that could just pop up. And they believed that out there on that sea is where evil spirits lurked. It's Jesus ascending them out to face with evil. Think of that sea like a haunted house, where evil spirits dwell. And I remember when I was a little kid one time, one of our neighbors in their neighborhood, had an abandoned house, and a bunch of us snuck into it and to see what was in there. They were haunted, and I was terrified. And we're going through this house, and I'm certain the cops are going to come any moment to arrest us, or one of the parents would have seen us and called our folks. And as we're going through opening drawers or opening closets, I'm waiting to see a dead body somewhere, and the floorboards are creaking. And then in those days, I did believe in ghosts. And so I just couldn't take it anymore, and I just ran out of that house. So the disciples are going out onto this sea, the place where evil spirits live. And now they're into it, and they're up against an evil spirit. And so when they see Jesus walking on the water, naturally they thought it was a ghost. And then another deep truth happens. Peter says to him, if it is you, Lord, call me, and I'll walk on the water. And Jesus says to Peter, come. And he begins walking on the water. But then it says, when he saw how strong the wind was, or a more literal translation, when he looked at the strong wind, or in other words, when he was looking right at that evil spirit, it overwhelmed his heart, and he began to sink. And that was true of Peter, and it's true of us. When any of us look at evil face to face, it can overwhelm our hearts. When we see all of the evil that goes on in this world, when we see the war and the violence and the exploitation of people, it's stunning. And it can make us, as with Peter, sink beneath the ocean. Or what it can do is it can turn us into evil. When we see those evil people, we want to crush them. We see the people who are exploiting people, they deserve to be punished. And I'm going to do to them what they're doing to others. And evil can turn us evil. And not just the evil out there in the world, but in every one of our hearts. We've all sinned. We've all done evil. And that can be a difficult thing to look at. It can be hard for us to see the evil we've done. Maybe we've gone to confession. Maybe we've sought reconciliation, but still, sometimes the harm we've done, the memory of it stays with us. And a year or 2 or 10 years after the fact, we can think back on it and it comes back to us again. And with it comes all the recrimination and all of the guilt and all of that evil once again begins tormenting us. And it can overwhelm our hearts. Or when we see our own personal evil, we can just turn away from it. I don't want to think about that anymore. I'm just going to ignore it. Forget that. It's over and done with. I'm not going to think about it. It's kind of like what babies do. You know, when babies get tired of looking at something or don't want to look at something, they turn away. I know outside the doors of the church when I'm saying goodbye to folks and some of them have their little babies with them, you know, I'll be looking at the little baby and hi, and the little baby might look at me and I'm not going to look at this guy anymore, and turns away. And sometimes I go and get back in front of the baby's face again and the baby turns away again. We can do that. Even though we've done evil and we know it, we can turn away from it. I just don't want to look at that anymore. I'm not going to think about that anymore. This friend of mine was telling me about a relative of theirs who was in rehab. And as he was going through rehab, they told him, now be prepared to start thinking about the people that you have hurt because of your addiction. And be prepared to begin seeking forgiveness. And his response was, I haven't hurt anybody. Which would make him the very first person in the history of the planet Earth to never hurt anybody by his addiction. But I get it. Sometimes I just don't want to think about that. I'm going to turn away from it. So Peter sees evil face to face, and it starts to overwhelm his heart. And then in a moment of fear and also humility, he calls out to Jesus, Lord, save me. And the gospel says Jesus immediately grabbed him by the hand. He snatched him up and then said to him, why are you lacking in faith? And then a very quiet truth takes place. They got back into the boat, and Jesus didn't carry Peter back into the boat. Peter started walking on water again. Only this time, he was doing it with Jesus. And there's a deep truth in that we all need to learn how to walk on water. A friend of mine, Monsignor Michael Hare, wrote a wonderful book called The Lost Art of Walking on Water. And I love the title. The book is great, but the title has such a wonderful truth to it that there is an art that we all must learn again of how to walk on water. And how do we do that? Well, it begins by us following that age-old custom within our church, which we've all called for centuries an examination of conscience. It begins with us finding a quiet moment in our life and sitting down, not by ourselves. We don't ever want to face evil alone. We sit with our Lord. And we begin to make an inventory. We begin to look into our lives. And maybe at some of the things in the past that we've done, and maybe, we've said we're sorry for, but still the memory of it haunts us. And we begin to talk to the Lord about all of that. And if we begin facing that evil with the Lord, and if we have the humility of Peter to say, Lord, save me, do we believe that he will, as he did with Peter, immediately grab us by the hand and help us to our feet? And then we begin walking on water.